Over the weekend, we had the big Business 20, the B20 summit in the capital. Siddharth, you were there on quite a few of the days. I had an opportunity to go both on Friday and on Sunday. The kind of energy and effort, not just the government, but also the private sector is making in trying to ensure that there are key recommendations which they're now hoping will get carried forward into the deliberations that happen in early September. So he's activated the whole of the system, it's a whole of government, bringing in the corporates as well approach, rather than just trying to do the bare minimum that is possible. The government really, to the extent that it can, trying to go out of its way to ensure that there is some lasting legacy India's G20 presidency leaves.
Absolutely, and that lasting legacy, there are multiple, including how debt restructuring for some of the poorest nations is happening. But to your broader point, I come back to where we started.
On debt restructuring, is there a possibility that there will be some kind of an announcement in the
I think
summit?
3 countries, because earlier only one has happened, 3 countries, and the Prime Minister refers to that very clearly. And Rahul, the point that you made, and we need to go back, and other panelists have also spoken about, the G20 started off as a crisis management group. Now today, what do? The Russia-Ukraine crisis outside the ambit of the G20. G20 can't do much about it, and I think it's highly unfair if anyone tries to bring that into a G20, because it's actually an economic forum and not even a multilateral trade forum in that way. So the effort that the Indian government has done and the involvement of businesses, I have seen 4 or 5 B20 summits, been on the ground for several G20 summits, and very clearly I haven't seen this kind of huge involvement of industry and Indian industry. Look at the choice of the main interlocutors from business from the Indian side. The head of Tata Sons, a globally respected Indian conglomerate, has footprints in dozens and dozens of countries. I clearly feel that the industry involvement is also a unique effort and initiative by this government, because that is where some of what we want to achieve overseas in diplomatic terms will get done through private industry, private capital and private initiative.
The other thing that comes out very strong, the pitch the Prime Minister is making, and Nandan Nilekani made the pitch as well, about offering India's digital public infrastructure, services like Aadhaar, UPI, CoWIN, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, and basically making this available as a model. And Sourav, your story actually refers to countries seeming quite excited by the prospects of taking the India stack, and that then becomes a very potent Indian export, which then lies at the heart of the public infrastructure, digital public infrastructure that other countries build on the top of the India stack.
Rahul, that is absolutely correct. I think India's digital stack, the India stack, is a gold standard now, being viewed as such as well by several countries across the world. People are keen to examine it. People are keen to incorporate it in their own economies. And I think the whole issue, which again the Prime Minister in his interview mentioned, that using technology for last mile welfare delivery, I think that's the critical element of the India stack, and also enhancing entrepreneurship, innovation on the back of technology. If you look at UPI, if you look at Aadhaar, the entire gamut of the digital infrastructure which India has so successfully built and continues to be built, like ONDC and other things. I think these are the whole gamut. The India stack is a role model, which is very soon. Mr. Nilekani mentioned it in his speech on the last day of the summit, that India will take it to many other countries over the next 5 years. And I think that is really one of the biggest, gifts, I would say, India can give to the world in terms of even the poorer countries.
How does this work, Ashok Malik? Do we make it available for free? Because Nandan Nilekani mentioned, I was sitting there at the B20 when he said that we hope to give it to 50 countries. We hope to have it activated in 50 countries in 5 years. Do we gift it? How does it work? Like, do they pay us?
No. Look, the point is the digital public infrastructure rollout in different countries will have to be done with different models. India can pass on expertise. India can build the road, as it were, but others can drive on the road as well. So even in India, the private sector has a big role to play in, for example, digital payments or in various aspects of our digital public infrastructure. But, Rahul, I'd like to make a larger point here. yes, the Prime Minister and the B20 initiative of India is quite right in appreciating that the private sector has a big role to play in B20 or G20 achieving many of its objectives, whether it's climate finance, where private equity and private banks have to play a greater role in lending than they have hitherto, or whether it is in DPI, digital public infrastructure, where private companies also have a role. But what struck me at B20 was that there was a gamut, a galaxy of global business leaders who came for B20. Quite frankly, they didn't come for any B20. They came for India's B20. And this is also a recognition of the appeal of India as a business destination, which, as a result of changes made by the Modi government over the past 5 or 7 years. We have to recognize that if this B20 had been held in another country, it might not have had got the sort of response from global business.
No, but how do you respond to criticism from the likes of P. Chidambaram, who we interviewed at the India 100 Summit, who basically said that there is more noise than actual delivery, that yes, the bells and whistles, the drums can be heard, but the actual numbers don't match with the kind of narrative that is attempting to be said?
You know, there's always scope for improvement, but if you look at FDI numbers in India, they speak for themselves. And even some of the companies you mentioned in Business Today mentioned in this interview, companies like Micron, companies like Tesla, potentially discussing coming to India, companies like Apple bringing more of their supply lines to India, that tells you a story. So I don't think, I don't want to get into politics here, that's not my remit, but I think there is clearly an appeal that India holds for many companies, for many investors, given that India is likely to contribute 1/5 of global GDP growth in this decade. And,
okay. Siddharth wants to come in to make a point.
Just very quickly, the line, and Ashok, you're absolutely right, the line about Apple has actually been picked up and noticed, not just in India, but overseas, because remember, this is also a time when China is desperately trying to woo back foreign capital, Chinese development, largely on account of US companies, and we've seen what has happened. So I think the fact that the Prime Minister mentioned Apple by name is in itself very significant.
So it's part of the question. The question is about countries
absolutely
like
in response to
Tesla.
Can I just add there? When Aadhaar happened, Rahul, there were countries that actually showed interest from Southeast Asia to have that entire knowledge, to have the data and the wherewithal to have centralized system in their own countries. When the digital payment systems were rolled out or kicked off here in India, there were countries that showed interest. So how is the Indian administration going to work? They're going to work either G2G or G2B, which is if the country, particularly I'm saying Southeast Asia, because India is a leading voice and a leading face when it comes to digital technology. Manufacturing, we are yet to get there, but in this space, we actually rule. So Southeast Asia countries, depending on what their structure of government is how India is going to deal with those countries, either G2G or it could be G2B.